Can a family of four survive on $83,750 right now? That's the median household income. And I asked ChatGPT to give us the average household expenses, so we can see if that income supports the average expenses. Your first gut reaction is probably correct, but we'll go through the details of all of these different categories, and it breaks it down into housing, utilities, food, transportation, healthcare, childcare, miscellaneous and lifestyle, and debt. I'll show a table of all of this so it makes it really easy to see. And I'd be interested to hear from you guys to see if these averages, if you think, are accurate. So let's go. So let's start with the median household income of $83,750. I just looked it up on Google, and that seems to be more conservative. So that could obviously be achieved in a couple different ways. That could be one household income while the other person stays at home, looks after the kids. That could be two full-time people, whether it's like $40,000 and $43,000 together, or if one person is full-time and the other is part-time. So right off the bat, that is before taxes. So I asked ChatGPT to give us what the average taxes could be. So it's giving us federal of $6,200, Social Security and Medicare of $6,400, state around $3,300, so a total tax of around $15,900. So the tax is around 19% of your income. So after tax, you're looking at $67,850. So we want to break this down into monthly, and to keep things simple, we can just divide that number by 12. Later in the video, I'll show why this is actually not really accurate. But to start, let's start there. So the main number to focus on, monthly income of $5,654. And that is our foundation to live off of. So now let's see what ChatGPT is giving us for averages of expenses, starting off with housing. So it shows us that average rent or mortgage could be between $1,500 to $2,200 a month. For property tax insurance, if you're owning, that's included, above or $300 extra. So it's averaging around $1,800. Obviously, this could vary drastically depending on where you live. Moving on to utilities, it's showing that electricity, water, and gas average $200 to $350 a month. It's also including internet of $60 to $100 a month. Also for phone plans of average $100 to $180 a month. So all that together, the average utility cost is $400. Let me know if you guys think these averages are accurate again. After these sections, I'll show you a table and I'll actually compare to mine. But moving on for food, another big expense, and it breaks it down into groceries and dining out. So groceries average $600 to $900 a month. That's weekly of $150 to $225. Dining out is average $200 to $400. That's weekly of $50 to $100, which honestly I think is fairly on the low end. But we'll get to that. So it's average of around $1,000 a month. That's weekly $250. I don't want to dwell on each of these too long, so we'll continue for transportation, car payments. This is 1 to 2 cars per family. That's $400 to $700 a month just on payments. There's also gas. That could be $150 to $300. Insurance, that could be $150 to $250. Maintenance, $50 to $100. So it's averaging all of that of $900. Moving on to healthcare, this could vary drastically, but insurance premiums out of pocket, it's averaging $300 to $700 with an average of $500. Speaking of highly variable, this is childcare and education. For daycare, it's $800 to $1,500 per child. If you guys have daycare costs, I'd be very curious to know what you're actually paying to see if this average is accurate. I am hearing that it is expensive. For us, luckily, I have the primary income and my wife stays at home. Even ChatGPT is calling this out. This is hugely variable. It could either be $0 or very high. So it's averaging that of around $400 a month. Moving on to personal and miscellaneous. This is including clothing, household items, and that's averaging 150 to 300. Entertainment and subscriptions 100 to 250, and other miscellaneous stuff. Especially if you have kids, you don't know what's going to happen. I just thought of a couple of examples that could go into this category. It could be like toilet paper, paper towels, detergents, if you have any pets, spices, medicines. So that's an average, it's telling us, of $500 a month. And the debt payment, not including mortgage, could be including student loans, credit cards, average $200 to $500 a month. So it's averaging $300. So those are all the categories. Here it is broken down into a table so we can see everything very easily. So the different categories and all the average monthly costs totaling $5,800 a month. Comparing that to our income of $5,600, $54, that's giving us a negative cash flow of $146. I also broke this down into the percentage of income based on the different categories. So we're seeing obviously housing makes up around a third of our income. Next largest would be food at around 18%, transportation around 16%. So it's good to focus on like the biggest expenses. And the total expenses is over 100% because we're spending more than we're making. And that's a problem. So I started thinking of like, are these averages believable? So I started comparing them to my expenses. For housing, I do have a house. I didn't put the full 20% down, so I might be on the higher side. I did buy the house recently, so the interest rate was or is at 6.5%, so it might be higher than in the past, but it seems like mortgage rates are actually going to stay elevated for a while. So mine of $2,400 compared to the 18 is higher. Comparing to utilities, I added up my average. It comes to around $450. So their average of $400, for me at least, seems somewhat fair. For food, we actually don't go out to restaurants very much. And we do spend on the lower side for groceries. So our total on the high end is $800. So it's actually lower than the average of $1,000. Transportation, we only have one car payment. And our insurance might be on the lower side. So of $400, not even $450 compared to the average of $900. And breaking down that $900, honestly, if you're looking at two cars, the average car payment today, even if you're thinking of $450 a month, that brings you to the $900, and that's not including gas, insurance. So honestly, $400 might be on the lower side. Healthcare costs, I'm pretty sure mine is at that average of around $500 a month. Childcare, my son is starting preschool later this year, and that preschool is going to be $260 a month. Again, my wife stays home, so compared to the average childcare cost, this could be on the lower side. Again, I would be very interested to hear from people who have childcare costs. Miscellaneous and lifestyle, this could just vary drastically. We don't spend drastically in this category, but I want to point out that what we just went through in these categories, this doesn't include savings, no extra debt payments if you want to get out of debt. This is no retirement. Like if you have 401k contributions coming out of your paycheck, this is none of that. This isn't talking about birthdays or holidays, no vacations, and we're still in the negative. And going back to the income side, this isn't even talking about how most people get paid, which is bi-weekly. So going back to the income, what we originally did was just divide by 12, and that's actually not accurate. For most people, it seems like you get paid bi-weekly or every other week. So if you break that down, you get paid 26 times a year. Normally, 2 times a month. And there are 2 months where you get an extra payment. So here comes the problem. You're not splitting up that salary just evenly throughout the 12 months. So what I did, I took that average after-tax income, divided by 26, and then you double it to get your monthly income. Because for 10 out of the 12 months a year, that's what your income is, which is $5,219 a month. So that brings your income lower, which means our cash flow is lower, now showing negative $581. Now, if you want to talk about those 2 extra payments a month, you could argue, at least the months that I get ours is for May and October. I could argue that the extra payment in October could be going straight toward holidays. And that extra money can be used one of 2 ways: responsible or irresponsible. A responsible thing to do with that extra money could be paying off any debts you may have, especially credit cards. If you're in this situation, you're losing money every single month. So what are you doing? Putting money on a credit card? So that extra payment could be paying that balance down. Or an irresponsible thing to do with the extra payments, which I could argue a majority of people probably do, is that they waste it. They piss it away as soon as they get it. So that extra payment probably isn't helping them as much as you think. So I'd argue that this negative almost $600 a month is what the average person is living like. Again, this is no savings, no investing, no vacations, which is why I'd be curious to know your opinions on these averages for these categories. Just touching on that, housing, I mean, you could be slightly flexible. Obviously, you shouldn't buy more house than you can afford. But like if you're staying in your area, like whatever the rent or the mortgage is, can't really change too much. And this is what the majority of the expense is. The next one is food. Sure, you could try to tighten that up. Cars. I think this is a huge expense that people look over. I feel like a lot of people could just like buy a car without really thinking, not really a down payment. So the payment is high. So there could be a lot of improvements in these categories. But that's the thing. You can't live like the average person because clearly the average person can't survive on this. That's why credit card debt is increasing. That's why Affirm and these buy now pay later loans are becoming more popular because they have to be. And that means credit card balances are increasing, credit card interest rates are ridiculous, and that's why people can't save anything. So moral of the story, don't live like the average person because you're going to be broke. It's possible, but challenging. And I'd want to know what you guys think. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them down below. I appreciate you guys for watching. What I'm trying to do is help young families simplify money in a real world that it makes it harder than it should be. So thanks again, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.